Hey everyone, I want to talk about my predictions over the next 10 to 20 years, which is basically all theory, on kind of what we're seeing when it comes to the increases in OCD and anxiety-based disorders, neurosis, other types of mental health disorders, and just a lot of general anxiety, not general anxiety disorder as the disorder itself, but just a lot of people holding strong black and white irrational beliefs, dogmatic beliefs about everything ranging from relationships to their overall health, exercise, fitness, nutrition, to the way work should be and everything else in between. I think that this is probably going to be the most theoretical video I've ever made because there's no way to prove any of this stuff, but we're seeing a massive increase from our point of view because of younger individuals getting the majority of their information when it comes to mental health, dating advice from social media, and why that's a slippery slope because there's pros and cons of social media. It's not inherently good or bad. The answer in everything almost lies in the gray area and being open-minded, whether you disagree or not, willing to have a discussion. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button, comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. This will be a really fun video for me. I've been thinking about this for a couple days now. When I was at the gym, I said, you know what, I'm going to turn the camera on and do this video because I think there could be some really good points in this. So what do we know about the human race? I always like to use a seesaw. If you know what a seesaw is, right? You go to a park, the thing goes up and down when two people sit on it. Throughout history, all the way back thousands of years, humans have teeter-tottered on beliefs in different ways, right? You had strong periods of time where maybe a certain religion was the number one. Then it would go back and forth maybe to another one in a certain area when a certain invader would come and take over the city and would bring their values and principles and things would swing back and forth. Now, 1900 to 1970, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I know in 1950 you were smoking cigarettes everywhere. You're smoking on airplanes. You're smoking in the doctor's office. I know at some point they had cocaine, the drug, and Coca-Cola. I know only 150 years ago, one of the number one remedies for headaches was putting your head in this metal contraption and hitting it with a hammer because I thought vibration therapy. Now I know that's not good for you. Bloodletting was the number one form of therapy for OCD for 450 years. Sane asylums were really big. So I want to talk about the last 50 years and what we're seeing in human psychology, because everything that we do at this company is based around human psychology and perspectives and changing beliefs. So 50 years ago, no one gave a shit about really anything on too much of an extreme. Of course, it was out there, but they didn't see it the way we see it today, which is total perfectionistic nightmares, blended in and masked by academia and science and backgrounds. So like, oh, I have a PhD in neurology. You got to live your life in this extreme black and white manner. Now, social media isn't the norm, but because it's where everyone gets their information from, we have confirmation bias where people think that everyone thinks like that. But if I was to pool 500 people together and say, what's your opinion on this jaw clenching thing to make yourself jaw look bigger, 495 out of them would say it's the stupidest thing ever, which it is, because it goes directly into conditional self-acceptance and all the problems we're having with plastic surgeries today. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things, but there's a lot more cons than pros. A lot. There's minimal pros. There are pros, but minimal and long-term sustainability when it comes to your psychological health. So what we're seeing right now is the pendulum is swinging, or the seesaw is teetering to the side of absolute perfection. Now, I've played this scenario out many times in my head where I think, where do I think this will start to teeter back the other way? I don't think any of us will be alive. I could be wrong. I think there will need to be some type of massive catastrophe in order for humans to start valuing the things that make a lot more sense long-term when it comes to certain values, whether it's helping each other out. Humans are naturally selfish. It's not about not having selfishness. There's no such thing as being selfless, by the way, because drinking water is an act of selfishness to keep your own self alive. But the balance is completely out of whack right now. We see it in society. We see it in what people fear and their belief systems and how black and white they are. So I really don't know when this will shift the other way. But again, I don't think I'll be alive for that. I think we will be dead. But I could be wrong on that because no one knows. This is just pure theory. But what we're seeing now is the perfect morning routines, the perfect nighttime routines, the perfect sleep hygiene, the perfect nutrition, the perfect exercise. You got to wake up at 4 a.m. You know, Robin just made a really good post on his Instagram. If you don't follow his OCD Recovery .com, like .com, but just no dot, his Instagram, I'm sure you all follow it, but if you don't and you find this video, it's a killer Instagram account. He made a really good post today, which is June 14th, about all this influencer stuff that we're seeing that's causing a lot of psychological problems. So again, let's take sleep for an example. Got to have the perfect sleep routine. Got to have no blue light before 2 hours before bed. And we're not saying there's not a physiological effect with blue light. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying it really doesn't matter, because it doesn't really matter. And I know this is really hard for people to hear, but it just doesn't matter as much as you think it does. It matters. It just doesn't matter as much as you think it does. I'll say it again. It matters. It just doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Humans, by default, are what I like to call information gatherers and majoring in the minors. I watch a lot of podcasts on different subjects, and when I watch these podcasts, I'm realizing a lot of people talk about the minors. Now, there's nothing wrong with being passionate about the small percentage of things. You know, maybe you're a molecular biologist, or maybe you're a biochemist, and you're trying to talk to people about how cell metabolism works when it comes to nutrition. That's great, and that's an awesome field to be in. But the thing is, it really doesn't matter in practicality too much, unless you're doing a specific research. I know that sounds mean, but it's the truth. No one wants to say that because no one wants to hurt anyone's feelings. Myself, for 10 years, I was completely obsessed with exercise physiology. I read every journal. I was a member of all these different major journals. I followed all the top researchers. And when I really sat down and thought, what matters? Going to the gym 4 to 5 days a week, being consistent, going when you're tired, working out close to failure, taking some steps to failure, eating in a calorie deficit if you want to lose some weight, eating in a calorie surplus if you want to gain some weight. The end. That's it. That's all the research put into one thing. Takes creatine monohydrate if you want, 5 grams a day. Take pre-workout if you want. Take protein powder if you want. Balance your nutrition. You don't have to cut everything out. That's everything I read for 10 years. Summed into what actually matters. The biggest piece is the consistency. Take sleep. What matters when it comes to sleep? Having maybe a structured bedtime, and then where you're like, I'm going to try and get in bed by 10 or 11. I wake up most days at 5. Last night I got in bed at 10:05. I probably was in my bed because Daisy was kicking me as she usually does until about 10:30. Slept 6.5 hours, got up, went to the gym this morning. That's usually my norm. Anytime I go any more than that, like I just was on vacation. My next video, by the way, is going to be all about vacations, anxiety leading up to vacations, anxiety coming back from vacations. So just to premise you on that. And I would think to myself, you know, I was there and we would stay up a little bit later. We were staying up till 1, 2 in the morning. We had 6 of us. We don't see each other a lot, playing some drinking games. And one day I think I went to sleep at 1:30. I had a little bit too much to drink because I threw up for the first time in a long time. Because I don't drink beer and I felt so bloated from the beer. I'm like, I'm getting this out of me. So I puked and threw it up. And we went hiking for 10 miles in the desert the next morning. And I was like, ugh. But I wasn't anxious about that. It just was the way it is. And is it the healthiest option? No. Is it okay to do every once in a while? Sure. Is it a problem if you're doing that 6 days a week? Probably. But those black and white, yes, it is a problem. No, it's not a problem. This is the way it is. Don't settle for someone unless you find someone that supports all of your values. And we're seeing like relationships. And that's why I wanted to go with that. I want to swing into the relationships. We're seeing a major problem. Okay, let's go problem number 1. These are things I don't really talk about in my OCD videos. Problem number 1, we're seeing a massive population decline. Okay, just what I see, what we're seeing in the literature and the data. Okay, why? It's expensive to live in many areas of the world. People have more access to comfort. They want to travel more and act more selfishly. No, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. I'm just saying that's what we're seeing. But we're also seeing this idea of the perfect relationship. Anyone can turn their camera on, you know, an 18-year-old person that lives in LA and has a nice sunset of the Santa Monica Pier, and they're being like, 5 ways to know that you should be in love. It's like this person's never been in a long-lasting relationship. It's like saying, the similar example is having someone who hasn't been consistent in the gym for 10 years telling you why it's important to exercise. I mean, their opinion doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because they've never been consistent and stayed with that. Now, again, there's a lot of hard truths in this. But a lot of these points matter a lot because we're always looking for that like quick answer. I rarely, if ever, through my perspectives and my beliefs from cognitive behavioral therapy, rational mode behavioral therapy, acceptance, unconditional acceptance, the Ellis principles, and Stoicism, I rarely see good information on relationships on social media at all. Like maybe one post, like outside of our stuff, 1 to 2 posts a year. A year. Not a month, not a week, definitely not a day. A year. And I see them because they're always in my feed because of the stuff I'm looking at. They're just bad pieces of advice. They're very black and white. Look for the perfect partner. They have to respect your values. Don't do this, don't do that. And then we're seeing this creation of separation where people don't have that socializing. And then with more AI, more internet, more pornography, more virtual reality, people are disassociating and connecting with these sources of connection that aren't really real. I use the example, and there's some really cool literature. And again, I don't really use the literature stuff anymore, but this is a really cool one where they talk about, when you're on, say, a dating app, again, not inherently good or bad, I have to premise that a lot, and you're being rejected or swiped no, that's not real rejection. Going up and having a shame attacking exercise, maybe you're a guy, heterosexual male, going up to a girl in the bar, and you're saying, hey, look, I think you're cute, you want to dance with me? And she says no. That brings a face-to-face interaction that comes with feelings that you don't want to feel. That stuff is completely dying out. So now what we're having this population of very low frustration tolerance, mixed in with all these social media sources based around the perfect exercise, the perfect nutrition, the perfect way to lift. Do you need deload? You gotta rest. You gotta get perfect vitamins and everything like that. Like for myself, I take 5 grams of creatine monohydrate a day for like 17 years. I take 3 grams of fish oil. I take a B vitamin. And I take vitamin D. I take those 3. I went on vacation. I didn't take them at all when I was there for 4 days. I brought my creatine with me, but I didn't take my vitamins for 4 days and didn't think anything of it. So it's really important to understand that principle as you're going throughout your life and you're realizing like, hey, look, there's a lot of stuff on social media that's portraying a very black and white view on life. Relationships are really slippery. Health is really slippery. You got to look at the realities of life. Again, majoring in the minors. Eat balanced, enjoy your life, enjoy your foods. If you have an allergy or you have some severe food sensitivity, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about balance is usually the answer. Trying not to overeat, trying to have portion control, realizing you're a human. You're not going to be able to stick with that all the time. Exercise, there's a million conflicting exercising things. Sleep, when you sleep, you sleep. When you don't, you don't. It's legitimately that simple. Nothing else really matters in the grand scheme of longevity of your mental health. If you sleep, you sleep. If you don't, you don't. I always mention Beth, the holistic sleep coach, someone that we work with. She had really bad insomnia. She has a great statement. I've said it multiple times in videos. The sleep industry has built a multi-billion-dollar industry, convincing you on the detriments of sleep. She had horrible sleep insomnia. She went from sleep clinic to sleep clinic. I've had great combos with her. I had a 45-minute one-to-one with her about a year ago, just asking her about her journey. And if I remember correctly, she had Lyme's as well, which is really serious. And they would give her all these basically routines and tips to the best sleep clinics about everything that's incorrect because it's the fear that's driving it. Most things in life don't need to be as extreme. We're not saying you have to eat cereal all day. We're not saying that, you can't use sunscreen. We're saying that it's just not as important as we think it is. And there's a difference between concern and over-concern. So as the summary comes up on the video, over the next 10 to 20 years, I think we're going to see a massive increase in mental health problems. I think we're going to see a massive increase in, in just people with really strong black and white beliefs. Relationships are going to be going down the drain, which they already are. Work frustration, work looking for the perfect work environment. That's not how life works. I worked at McDonald's and in restaurants my first few years, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I learned a lot of skills that I now use in this, and I use in my business I own, and all that other stuff. But the reality is, usually the big names on social media that seem rational, they're extremists. They're strong extremists. And if I had a conversation with these big 5 or 6 names, if I mention them, you don't know who they are, I think they would tell me I'm an idiot. I'm a moron. I'm naive. And I wouldn't have to prove a single point to any of these people. because there's no need to. I spent my entire life trying to prove points to people, and I realize now at the other side of that I could state my opinion. I watched a really good debate yesterday on two analysts in the macroeconomic space that I enjoy listening to. One of them is a little bit older, reminds me of Rob, a combination of Rob and Moment in their delivery. The other person is extremely smart, but they're young, and they reminded me of myself, cutting the other person off. And even if the information that you carry is sound, has knowledge and truth, if your delivery is off, you hinder yourself. And that's not based off a fear of rejection. It's just the truth. You create an echo chamber of extremists around you, and that's not really what you want to do long term, in my opinion. You could say I'm wrong, and that's totally okay. So thank you so much for watching this video. Very theoretical, but I think a fun video. Remember, if you're interested in our coaching and our webinar services, please email us at phil@ocdrecovery.com. Again, that is phil@ocdrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in timely fashion. Have a good one, everyone.